Imagine a single letter, a letter that could shift the entire balance of global politics. A letter that demands allies fall in line, or face a fractured alliance. That's exactly what happened when President Donald Trump issued an ultimatum to NATO nations, saying the U.S. will only impose major sanctions on Russia if every single NATO country agrees to do the same and stops buying Russian oil altogether. This ultimatum is more than just tough talk. It could reshape NATO's unity, global trade, and the very future of the war in Ukraine. On Saturday, President Donald Trump revealed he sent a letter to NATO allies. In it, he laid down a clear demand. The United States would only proceed with sweeping new sanctions against Russia if NATO members also stepped up. Specifically, Trump insisted that nations must completely stop purchasing Russian oil, a move that would significantly impact Europe, Turkey, and other major buyers. In a social media post quoting the letter, Trump wrote, "I am ready to do major sanctions on Russia when all NATO nations have agreed and started to do the same thing, and when all NATO nations stop buying oil from Russia." Trump argued that NATO's commitment to defeating Russia has been far less than 100% and called out the purchase of Russian oil as shocking and a betrayal of the alliance's leverage against Moscow. Oil has always been Russia's lifeline. Even with the war in Ukraine raging on, fossil fuel sales remain one of Russia's biggest sources of revenue. While the European Union banned maritime imports of Russian oil and refined products, loopholes remain. Countries continue to import liquefied natural gas and other fossil fuels, keeping billions flowing into Moscow's war chest. But Trump's demand is sweeping. He is not asking for gradual reductions or symbolic moves. He is demanding total stoppage across all NATO members. That means even Turkey, Hungary, and Slovakia, countries that still rely on Russian oil, would need to cut ties. This makes his ultimatum incredibly difficult for NATO to implement. But Trump didn't stop with Russia. In the same message, he also called for NATO to hit China with massive tariffs. His proposal? Every NATO member should impose tariffs between 50% and 100% on Chinese goods. Tariffs that would remain in place until the Russia-Ukraine war ends. Trump argued that this would apply maximum global economic pressure, not just on Russia, but on its key backers. According to him, punishing China financially would push them away from indirectly supporting Moscow. He stated, "I believe that this, plus NATO as a group, placing 50% to 100% tariffs on China, will also be of great help in ending this deadly but ridiculous war." This is an extraordinary demand. NATO is a military alliance, not an economic one. Tariff policies typically fall under the European Union, not NATO. By bringing tariffs into the NATO framework, Trump is expanding its role beyond defense into economic warfare. The reaction from European officials has been cautious, if not outright skeptical. EU leaders have already imposed energy bans and sanctions, but they are wary of Trump's aggressive tariff plan. Many European nations are deeply integrated with Chinese trade, and starting a tariff war could hurt their economies far more than it hurts China. Officials who met with Trump earlier in the week made it clear tariffs on China or India are unlikely. That's simply not how Europe approaches trade conflicts. While Trump may see tariffs as a weapon, the EU traditionally prefers negotiations and multilateral trade deals. Meanwhile, India, a major buyer of Russian oil, has already clashed with Trump. He recently doubled tariffs on India to 50%, sparking outrage in New Delhi. India called the move unjustified, accusing the U.S. of unfairly targeting them while other countries still purchase Russian oil too. Trump's choice to frame his ultimatum through NATO rather than the EU brings Turkey into the spotlight. Turkey is not a member of the EU, but is a key NATO ally, and crucially, it's the third largest purchaser of Russian oil after China and India. For Trump's plan to work, Turkey would have to make a dramatic shift in its energy policy. That would mean cutting off affordable oil imports and reshaping its fragile economy, something Ankara may resist. This makes Trump's demands even more complicated, since Turkey's cooperation is far from guaranteed. At its heart, Trump's ultimatum isn't just about oil or tariffs. It's about NATO unity. By making U.S. sanctions conditional on NATO's collective action, Trump is effectively holding the alliance hostage to a single standard. If NATO members refuse, the U.S. may withhold harsher sanctions, leaving Europe to carry the burden alone. If they comply, NATO risks splintering under the economic strain of sudden energy cuts and tariff wars. This is a high-stakes gamble. Either way, NATO's credibility and cohesion are on the line. One person who benefits from delays and disagreements is Russian President Vladimir Putin. Every week that NATO struggles to align its policies is another week that Russia can solidify control over occupied territories, adjust to sanctions, and even find new buyers for its oil. Time, as analysts note, is one of Putin's greatest weapons. By creating divisions between NATO allies, Trump's ultimatum could unintentionally give Moscow breathing room. This ultimatum also comes against the backdrop of Trump's much-anticipated meeting with Putin, scheduled for August 15th in Alaska. Many had hoped that summit could bring momentum toward ending the war, but in recent weeks, progress has stalled. Trump's escalating demands of NATO risk prolonging the conflict instead of resolving it. While he insists that massive tariffs and sanctions will end the war quickly, skeptics warn it could just as easily drag the conflict out longer. So, what happens now? NATO leaders face a tough choice. Do they align with Trump's maximalist strategy, cutting off Russian oil and launching tariffs on China? Or do they continue their more measured approach, one that maintains unity but may not deliver the knockout economic blow Trump envisions? Either decision carries enormous consequences, not only for the war in Ukraine but for the global economy. Trump's ultimatum is not just another political headline, it's a turning point. By demanding that NATO nations stop buying Russian oil and impose massive tariffs on China, he's challenging the alliance to take unprecedented steps. But NATO is not just about military strength, it's about consensus. And right now, consensus seems hard to achieve. As the war drags on and Putin waits for cracks in the Western Front, the world is left asking, will NATO take Trump's gamble, or will his ultimatum deepen the divide?